Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about the context of why there's so many different uh, languages in the world and different races. Like you have the Chinese or the Oriental, you have the Africans that are black, and then you have like Mexicans, and you have, well, not Mexican, but Spaniards, and all the different things that seem to separate us in regards to not just language, but like the color and type of hair, the color of our skin, maybe even the size and build, and the color of our eyes and stuff like that. If you can understand the context of breeding takes the context of one animal and mixes it with another animal to get the animal they want. There's like they have like special breeding that they did between they want the benefits of this animal and the benefits of this animal to make one that can help. Like they created some dogs that were good for hunting lions, so they got the characteristics. And similar in regards to like for the pit bull, they bred them for fighting where their jaws lock, and stuff like that. And and it's just playing around with the strengths of one animal, one dog with another dog. And I'm not quite sure what their purpose was in creating a Chihuahua. It looks like they took everything that was good about a dog, and there you go, you got a Chihuahua. But anyways, so you understand that combining that kind of stuff gives you different characteristics. But if you go back to where the original dogs that were created, those dogs had every characteristics that are in every dog. And um and and then and, and they just it just kept spreading. The only thing is that if they have dogs that have that have these characteristics a little more stronger than these characteristics, well, if they go and get with another dog that has similar characteristics, well, then you're gonna have identical dogs, to the point that now, like, if you have a Chihuahua with a Chihuahua, well, you get a Chihuahua, because basically you got a very limited scope of characteristics to work with. Anyways, so back in the day when Adam and Eve were born, they had all the characteristics of everything. So every time, and all the different combinations. Of course, they married their sister, their brother, and whatever, their cousin, and whatnot. But it was very rich because there wasn't a big pool, so it was very rich. And so you didn't really have a whole lot of deviations. You wouldn't have like blacks and Chinese in that kind of context until the Tower of Babel. Now, the Tower of Babel caused God to do something that would try to preserve mankind from destroying themselves within his own pride, because he was getting so proud that he's thinking, I don't need God. I can do anything without him. I can become my own God, similar to what Satan was trying to do. And so he was concerned that man was getting too involved in realizing his potential outside of God, that he would end up destroying himself, that God decided to separate all their languages and give this group a certain language, this group a certain language, this group a certain language, this group a certain language. And when they're all intermingled, there was a lot of people who didn't understand what anybody was saying, which means they couldn't continue with their plans, and everything sort of fell apart because nobody could. There wasn't a whole lot of ability to communicate anymore, and therefore you had these people that that were speaking the same language. They sort of gravitated to themselves, and the ones that spoke this certain language moved this way, certain language moved that way, certain language moved that way, another language moved that way. So people kind of gravitated to the people who spoke their language. Well, that in essence kind of isolated the pool of what you have to work with in regards to the characteristics that we have as humans. And so therefore, that pull sort of, you know, isolated what was Vela and became whatever type of characteristics that race had. But and also, you know, I have to understand a little bit. In those days at the beginning, you had brother marrying sister and cousins and close whatever, and when the law came, that was started to be prohibited. And the reason why it was prohibited was because of the fact that the gene pool, the characteristics that are to work with, start to mess up when you don't have the variety available. Because therefore, the characters are so similar between brother and sister. They would, if they would marry and have children, the children would get deformed and sickly and have issues. And that's the same way with like the Chihuahua. I mean, Chihuahuas are always having issues, and because so many characters just been drawn out of them, that they have all kinds of health issues. And so there was a desire to make sure that the gene pool would not get to that point where you have a whole bunch of diseased offspring and weak and defective offspring because of the gene pool being and this is scientific stuff, you know. It's just, you know, that's the whole context, is that it causes that kind of problem. So the laws in regards to that stuff was meant to preserve, just like the ceremonial laws on don't eating pigs. It was, you know, don't do this. It was because God wanted to keep his people as strong and healthy as possible. And of course, now we're spread so far out and so thin. It is always, it's never good in the context of siblings getting together. Whether for sinful reasons or thinking they're going to get married or something. So you have that context in regards to that kind of stuff, and we got to always approach God in a way that gets us understanding that God is about us, his love for us. I mean, it says, for God so loved the world that he gave his son. He gave his son. I mean, it's like the price that he was willing to pay so that we would not perish. Which means if God loves us, if God is for us, who can be against us? You know, and that all this that Satan says in regards to, you know, God's going to beat you up and God's going to kick you into hell and God's going to stuff like that. God, his whole heart is to save, not to destroy. The problem is that we are already self-destructive and heading towards destruction. And God is calling us to not go. Whether or not we choose to believe, whether we choose to not go, really he leaves that up to us. But God has done everything to turn our hearts towards him.